Yeah, uh-oh.
Can we do an interview on racism?
Whatever your subject is going to be.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Okay. Well, we're here with Star Parker, and she's going to discuss her views on racism. My first question is, what is racism?
Well, I think it's so difficult to define these days that we don't know. When we as a country were founded, we had a horrible egregious to the Lord. We had slavery in the land, and God needed to purge it. Going through time in the history of the African American people in our country, they had to endure more pain, more struggle through the Jim Crow era. But when you see what happened after King's death, when it became totally politicized to be of darker skin in the country, they started journeying into a relationship with government. And so now we have a perception of racism business that's hundreds of billions of dollars strong. So it's very difficult now to say, are there still challenges? Have we matured? To get to the question that Paul Johnson asked in his book, The History of the American People, can you survive this? Will we be able to build a society that looks at altruism and ambition with its history? And I think that question is still open.
So let's try to define it. If you conclude that somebody is not qualified for a job because they're black, would that be racism?
I am not going to look into situational ethics because I'm not one that speaks there. Number one, I am a columnist, so I don't make judgments on particular issues. But number two, I think that situational ethics is what gets us in problems when we start trying to define law based on personal situations.
But if somebody is black and they say that they're not qualified for a job because they're black, you don't think that that's racism?
If who says they're not qualified for it?
The employer. If you conclude, if the employer concludes that
how do you know that he concluded that? See, that's why I'm saying this is the problem with situational ethics. Is you cannot determine.
This is the premise of the question. If you are disqualified from a job, you're viewed as not qualified because of the color of your skin, because you're black, would that be racism?
Would it be illegal? Yes. It's illegal in this country to discriminate against someone simply because they're African American, whether you think or not think that they're qualified. See, these are the problems with what we're doing now when we look at ethnicity individually.
But does the color of somebody's skin determine whether they're qualified for a job?
Does the color of somebody's skin determine whether they're qualified for a job? Depends on the job. I mean, there are some jobs that, yes, color matters. I mean, if you're leading the NAACP, I think that they will want somebody African American. I think it depends on what type of job we're talking about to say whether ethnicity. I think that my bigger point is that when you get too detailed down into the minutia, you make big mistakes on big, not only sensitive, but big moral questions. When you ask about a blanket question of racism and then want to get into specifics about what about this decision, what about that decision, what about this individual that may have made
it's a general situation.
But it's not a general situation because
employers.
But you don't know. No, all employers are not the same.
Absolutely not.
All individual applicants are not the same. Every application is not the same. So there is no such thing as a general question when it comes to whether a boss or a potential employer is going to hire or not hire someone based on just his ethnicity.
If he told you that he didn't hire that person because he concluded that they were not qualified because of the color of their skin, would that be racism?
Does he tell me this or does he tell his daughter this?
Anybody. He's telling you the truth about his mental process.
He's telling the truth about his mental process that I'm going to now determine based on racism that we cannot define because we're not talking about whether we're talking a legal sense of the word or we're talking a moral sense of the word. If you're talking
let's try moral.
You know what? Let's try moral. Then who amongst us is not without sin? I'm not going to answer your question because we don't know the answer. It's hard to get into the heart of man and determine if he's even telling the truth for the exact specific reason that he determined that he was not going to hire someone was based on and only on the color of their skin. We don't know that, and so I'm not.
He's telling you directly.
But who is he telling? Me personally? So he's going to come up to an African American person.
You or anybody else.
So you're telling me that an employer,
yes,
a potential employer, is going to walk up to me and said, Joe
if you
Smith
ask
was
him,
in my...
if you ask him and he's your friend or whatever, and he said, "Why didn't you hire this person?"
Obviously, if he's my friend, it couldn't have been racism. Now, could it? Thank you
Why?
for the interview. Because if he's my friend,
how
do you
a different question?
Wait a minute.
Well,
There are others waiting for me as well. But yeah, please ask a different question because this one is so obviously stupid, and that you have no respect for who I am and what I've been able to accomplish.
Why is it stupid?
Because you're asking a very subjective question in a moment interview that has minutia and details that we can't determine in a flat yes or no because of mankind.
I asked this question to Dr. Ben Carson, and he had no problem to answer.
Well, isn't that interesting how you asked Dr. Ben Carson a question, and now you're asking me the same question, but based on the fact that both of us carry the same ethnicity, totally different people, totally different.
I agree.
You actually think that we should both have...
No, I'm saying
I'm sure
nobody,
the example, it wasn't a white example, it was a black example.
I've asked a lot of congressmen this question, and everybody seems to
and they get
have
their
no
own
problem.
Answer, don't they?
Everybody agreed that that's racism.
I'm answering your question.
You say you don't know, or you can't?
I said that it's too subjective for me. Can I not be an individual to not be able to say yes or no to this question that has a whole lot of details in it?
What if you won't let somebody into your club or organization because they're black? Would that be racism?
If somebody does morally, or you know what, I think that this is not going to go anywhere. But whose morals?
Your morals.
My morals are irrelevant, which is what I told you, because I'm a columnist. I don't have my own personal opinions. I'm a syndicated columnist, and I'm a book author, so I don't personalize any of these issues or any of these questions.
In your columns, you don't have your opinions?
I have my opinions in my opinion column, but not on this specific question of morality based on somebody else's moral decisions. Because their morality is also subjective. I don't know that person. I'm not sure if, based on their morality, they think that is right or wrong. If you're talking legally, I'm not a lawyer.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Do you agree with Dr. Martin Luther King that you should judge people based on their character and not the color of their skin?
Do I agree with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said that he wants his little girls to be judged on the content of their character and not based on the color of their skin? I agree to a certain extent.
Only to a certain extent?
Right.
You think sometimes it's right to judge people based on the color of their skin?
I'm African American, of course I do.
Why is that relevant? Does the color of a person's skin determine their merits or their skills?
It determines their culture, and some African Americans want to preserve some of it. So yes, I think that
their merits and
race is important.
So it determines whether you can
know
how to use a computer or not.
No, of course
it depends. It has no effect on your skills.
No. Your race does not have an effect on your skills, no.
Or your merits as a candidate to be employed, or...
No, it doesn't affect your merits.
So you should judge people based on their actions, not on the color of their skin, right?
Right.
So wouldn't racism be when you evaluate somebody based on the color of their skin instead of judging?
You said that you were going to judge that person, and I think that when you think about people and their uniqueness...
Let me ask you the question, so see if you agree.
Hurry, because I have a meeting, and I didn't know that we were going to stay on one question the whole interview.
No, this is different.
It's the same question, and I think the problem with it is that...
You said that we could not define it.
I said it at the offset of the interview.
You couldn't say what it was.
You don't know my book, do you?
Which book?
Uncle Sam's Plantation.
I haven't read it, no.
Right. So in the first chapter, where I'm addressing all of poverty, I ask a question: what is it? And the fact that we cannot define it leads to other challenges in our society.
Poverty is when you're poor, when you don't have enough material resources.
I give a lot of different scenarios of what could be or what couldn't be. The same way you're trying to do on the question of racism, to use situational ethics to say, does this qualify, doesn't this qualify?
Well, before it qualifies, I'm trying to get an idea about what you think it is, what your principle.
But I told you I'm not going to tell you what they are.
Do you have a principle that permits you to determine when an action is racist and when it isn't?
Oh, who is it that said, I'll know it when I see it? Thank you for your time.
But you don't have any principle?